Today's guest is 7-time Grammy Award-winning multi-instrumentalist who sold out theaters.
Jacob Harmony, A432.
I'm not a genius.
So, why do people think he is? Jacob Collier has just released his 6th album at the age of 31 and is considered by many to be a modern-day musical genius. And he might well be, though I believe there's more than just his musical ability that's gained him that reputation. After watching many hours of Jacob Collier interviews, I've determined there are 4 big things that Jacob does to cultivate this image. Then you can decide whether he is in fact a genius. 1. Intentionally confusing language. The experience for lots of people listening to Jacob speak is both enchanting and confusing. He has this wonderful excitement and curiosity he brings to every topic he speaks about. And yet, often people leave feeling like they understand less than they did before. And that perhaps that's just because Jacob's a genius and they're simply not on his level. And while that absolutely may be true, it's also the case that Jacob describes music theory in a way that prioritizes conveying the sort of mystical component music can have over being clear and easy to understand. There are countless examples of this, but to name a few, the Undertone series.
Beneath that note, you have the Undertone series, which essentially is like a reflection of something in the same way that when a tree grows in nature, you have the branches which go upwards and the roots which go downwards.
In case you didn't know, the Undertone series does not exist. At least not in nature, as Jacob describes. The Overtone series, however, does. Jacob is just using a simple system to switch each note from the Overtone series to a different note, and then renaming that the Undertone series. This, by the way, is the same thing as negative harmony, which originally wasn't even called negative harmony. The guy who invented it, Ernst Levy, just called it inversional symmetry of harmony around an axis. Less catchy, I know, but also doesn't imply it to be anything more than it actually is. To be clear, Jacob didn't coin the term negative harmony, but certainly was a big part of popularising it, especially with this post. Similarly, he's been committed to describing the piano as out of tune.
That's how out of tune the piano is. It's insane. It's like that out of tune. How does no one know this stuff, man? Like, it's crazy. It's like a hoax.
Can you believe that? The piano is a lie. Everything about the piano is a lie.
And you'd think that this is highly controversial, but it's not. It's very well documented. If you take the intervals found in the Overtone series, you find exact ratios between frequencies. 2 to 1 is an octave, 3 to 2 is a perfect fifth, it goes on. And they use these ratios for a while. The only problem? Each semitone is then a slightly different size. So if you tune a keyboard instrument like that, you only end up being able to use some keys and relatively simple harmony. And that's what people did for many years. But it becomes quite limiting. So by the late 1800s, almost every piano was tuned to equal temperament, where some of the ratios are slightly adjusted so that every semitone is the same size. So is the piano out of tune with the Overtone series? Slightly, yes. But if you were to play a C-sharp major chord on a piano tuned with just intonation to C major, I think we'd all agree that's more out of tune. The piano is as in tune as it can be. Even on much smaller tuning issues, Jacob uses confusing language to describe simple things.
I normally don't use tuners, but I should.
I was wondering about that actually.
I tune to where I feel the note is in my head.
I think most people with perfect pitch would just say, I have perfect pitch. But maybe I'm being pedantic. So I've asked some of my friends with perfect pitch to tune a guitar, and we'll see what they say. Why didn't you need a tuner?
I've got perfect pitch.
I'm a freak with perfect pitch.
Oh well, perfect pitch I suppose.
2. Hyperfocus on niche topics. We've already seen it with negative harmony. Jacob's no stranger to picking a niche topic and deep diving on it. And obviously there's nothing wrong with that. But why does it create the perception of being a genius? Why are there other musicians alive now who have likely put in as much time into music as Jacob, but aren't considered geniuses? I believe it's due to what some refer to as demystification. For example, if a non-musician sees a musician play a song by ear, it literally seems like magic. There's no grasp of how easy or hard that is, because you can't even begin to understand how someone could do that. Then perhaps after playing an instrument for some time, the route to that skill becomes evident. And perhaps some Dunning-Kruger effect also takes place, where a little bit of knowledge makes you think you understand the whole thing. So how do you convince musicians that you've got almost magical powers? Well, you pick topics they're almost entirely unfamiliar with, and deep dive. With no understanding, no risk of the Dunning-Kruger effect, it really does seem like magic. And Jacob does this with quite a few things. Tapping complex polyrhythms with one hand, modulating to half-sharp keys, or microtonal voice leading. But maybe they are extremely difficult. Maybe I'm downplaying this too much. I should try it myself. So I did. I set a 1-hour timer and tried to learn this microtonal run.
Join in any reindeer games.
Splitting a minor third into 4. So initially my plan was to use Ableton to make a sort of guide track to sing along with. And then set a timer and see if I could learn it in an hour. But I had a 20-minute drive yesterday, so I thought I might as well give it a go and see how it goes. On my own, no guide track. It's been maybe 4 minutes, and I feel like I can kind of do it. Join in any reindeer games. Is that it? Am I doing it? I can't really tell if I'm actually evenly dividing the interval into 5, or if I'm adding in a half sharp note between 2 of them. But I'll give it a go and I can listen back afterwards and see how close I was. But yeah, I'm kind of shocked. Not that I'm necessarily great at it, but with literally 5-10 minutes, I can kind of approximate it. I kept practicing for a while and actually ended up swapping from singing the lyrics to singing because it made it easier to tell if I was actually singing it right. So this is my attempt after a 20-minute car ride of practicing with no guide track, just trying to sing it. Da, da. That's it, isn't it? Just to be clear, this isn't Jacob's magnum opus. He just describes this as a game he plays for fun sometimes. But I do think it contributes to the genius image that he has. 3. Self-taught. Jacob claims to be largely self-taught because not having or needing teachers contributes to him seeming unreachable. If he has a teacher, it implies that what he does can just be taught, and that with enough practice you could do it too, which doesn't line up with his genius persona. But it also doesn't line up with reality. His mother, Jacob Collier, worked at the Royal Academy of Music as a teacher and a conductor. If, by the way, you've ever wondered why conductors seem out of time, you should watch this video. Anyway, Jacob ended up studying at the Royal Academy of Music right after his time at the Purcell School for Young Musicians. Although without a doubt, as is the case with all musicians, the work to become accomplished as a musician happens on your own time in the practice room, Jacob describing himself as self-taught is definitely inaccurate. 4. More is more. Jacob played every instrument on the first album he released, then released 4 albums in a row but described them as a quad album, and has some of the most random and diverse collaborations of any artist, dead or alive. Obviously that's highly impressive on all fronts, and it contributes to his perception of being a genius. Had the time he spent practicing various instruments only been allocated to one instrument, the diminishing returns on his improvement would mean that actually very few people would be able to perceive a difference in his playing. His prolific musical output is comparable to that of historic composers we consider to be musical geniuses. Had he released music less frequently, or in line with only one genre, it's likely he wouldn't have been viewed quite the same way. So, is he a genius? Sure, why not? I don't get to decide who is and isn't a genius, and to be honest, I don't really care. I am, however, interested in what it takes for someone to be described as a genius. I think maybe a better question is, do musical geniuses exist at all? Had Mozart released his body of work today, he wouldn't be considered exceptional, because nothing he wrote would be considered novel anymore. And in the modern era, the uncertainty around him wouldn't be there either. There'd be YouTube videos describing how to write like Mozart. The mystery is all gone. So it seems to me that Jacob probably is aware of the sort of magical vibe he gives off, but I don't think he sat down one day and decided he wanted to be thought of as a genius. But I do think he's genuinely so excited about getting to make music and share it. If for some reason you're curious as to why it's almost impossible to sing in a tonal language, watch this video next.